disclaimer. The views of the guest and even the host sometimes are not necessarily the views of the Work With Me podcast and Ruse Advisors.
Welcome.
Work. The interview. Preparing for the interview. Picking your final candidate. Going over the offer. On-board training. Being let go. All things work-related from the employee and employer side are fair game here at the Work With Me podcast. Interact with us at workwithmepodcast.com. Email us at bob@ruseadvisors.com or Larindy at ruseadvisors.com. Your tough boss is Larindy Ruse. Your slacking employee is Bob Stei. And the fun starts now. You bet we are. We're having fun already. How ya doing, everybody? It's the Work With Me podcast, podcast.com. Also, you can hear us weekends on 102.3 HD2, KKNH, where classic rock lives, and tickradio.com. More affiliates coming. What's funny is if you listen to us at KKNH, we play a whole bunch of our podcasts back to back from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday. And then from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., I host the 90s grunge rock show, so you're basically stuck with me all day there. And on Tick Radio, it's from 6 a.m. to noon Eastern that we run a whole block. So if you want to hear this horrible voice, there are plenty of places to do it. And if you're interested in being an affiliate of our show, whether it be AM, FM, website, whatever, we welcome all of you. Email me at bob@ruseadvisors.com. That's ROOS. Our company page is ruseadvisors.com. And hello, we're here. Big thanks to our guest last week, Kathy Hobbs. We had so much fun having her on the show. We talked about her design company, her time on a reality show, her time at WPIX television in New York, and I had a nice post-chat with her about Baltimore news in the 80s. So, Kathy Hobbs, check out her website, listen to the last podcast, and get to know about her. I also like it because we've had a bunch of men guests in a row, which is fine. We had Kathy last week, and we have another female this week. The one and only Abby Friedman. Abby is an event planner and production manager, and she runs Friedman Productions. We're going to talk about that. What an interesting past she's had there. She has worked for NFL Network, the Jets, MSNBC television, so much. So I'm excited to have her on. I know she's on a tight schedule, so I'm going to try to make this short today. And the Work With Me podcast is brought to you by Divine Design with Elisa French. I've been working with her for a few months and I'm a lot calmer now. I'm letting go of some of the anger in the past. I told her, you got to keep enough edge in me so I can do this opening monologue each week. So get a free hour consultation, 509-638-4329, 509-638-4329, and work with her and get your mind in a positive frame. And when you do call her, tell her you heard about it on the Work With Me podcast. And once again, it's the Work With Me podcast, workwithmepodcast.com, 102.3 HD2, KKNH, where classic rock lives, and tickradio.com. So Abby, as I mentioned, has got a nice, interesting career working for not only MSNBC, which is my go-to channel, but she's worked for Major League Sports. She's worked for the New York Jets. So I put back my third call center story again. It's like the third week in a row it's been pushed to the side. You actually just see the spreadsheet I have of stories to talk about. In my many years of working, there's a lot to talk about, so I'll never run out of stories. But Abby made me think about one of the goofier things in my early career. When I graduated college in 93, and I talked about this in our second podcast. I was in New York, king of the world, loving life. My college let me live for free. And instead of really focusing on a job, I basically drank and partied 7 days a week. So it was awesome. I wouldn't trade that for anything. However, came September, and I'm back in my parents' basement in suburban Baltimore with no job, no career, and really had no idea what I was going to do. Now, I saw an ad in one of the papers. Back then, pre-internet, you would go to the newspaper, and it was like, radio talk show needs a producer and an advertiser. A seller. I'm like, fantastic. And there was a number to call. So I called the number and I introduced myself. Hi, I'm Bob Stei. I just came back to Baltimore from college in New York. I interned at WNEW-FM. I ran my college station. I could be a great help. Guy calls me back. Hey, we could definitely use someone like, let's schedule an interview. Now, the guy ran a talk show on a low wattage AM radio station, and it was a sports talk show, which is good, because as we mentioned, I like sports. I'm a sports fan like everybody else. I'm not a fanatic to the stream where I'm going to not talk to people or cause fights because of my sports team. That's silly. I just like sports. It's how I relax. So I meet this guy at like one of those chain restaurants in suburban Baltimore, I think the next day. And here I am. I got my long hair in a ponytail. I got a tie on. We meet at the table. We shake hands. And the silly thing I did, which I'm sure might have cost me the job, was he goes, "Hey, can I get you a drink?" Usually that means a beer or a water or soda. I was still drinking then. I actually got a strawberry daiquiri. He probably looked at me and goes, "What the hell's wrong with this guy? Are we on a date? Is this cocktail time?" But no, we had the drink. We talked about radio. He talked about the show, the station. I talked about all the things I did. And at that point, it was basically just an internship and running the college station. But I thought that was a big deal and definitely relevant. He then started to talk to me. So, who are your favorite radio personalities? And I'm going through a few of them, and I mentioned the Don and Mike show, and that was an old syndicated show, which is probably the reason I'm in radio right now. When I was a kid, I would wake up at 5 in the morning and tape their show because I couldn't get enough of it. He looked at me and goes, "I hate that show. I hate it. Ugh, I don't know if we could work together," jokingly. So we exchanged pleasantries. He goes, I'll give you a call in a few days and let you know. A few days come by, nothing happens. So I call him up, and he answers the phone. He goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, we went with another guy right now. He seems like a real sales stud. He'll do a good job. But thanks anyway." So there's my first out of college rejection. Wasn't the end of the world. As you know, a few weeks later, I got a job offer and accepted at one of the biggest radio stations in Baltimore history, where I worked at for 4 years. There I am, just stroking myself there. Oh, it's the Work With You Podcast, workwithyoupodcast.com, 1023 HD2 KKNH, where classic rock lives, tickradio.com. So I never even thought about the situation or this guy, and then I want to say 3 years later, I should call my old roommate for that. It was either 3 or 4 years later, and Baltimore's got a football team again, because the Cleveland Browns moved to Baltimore. You know, if you're not a big sports fan, the Baltimore Colts were the football team, and they moved to Indianapolis during a snowstorm in my hometown in '83, and the city was dying not having a football team. So they stole Cleveland's teams pretty much. So I'm a diehard Philadelphia sports fan. Even living in Baltimore, those are my teams. I love the Philadelphia teams. So the Philadelphia Eagles, are playing the Baltimore Ravens, and my roommate and my good friend got tickets for the game. I think he might still work for the Baltimore Sun, but he had a good context, and we got tickets to the game. Now he knows I'm a diehard Eagle. No big deal. So, of course, I had like an Eagle sweater on or something. I don't even remember, so many years ago. So we're just hanging out, and he brought a few friends with him, and we're just getting to know each other, talking and stuff, and we're walking towards our seats. He goes, hey, I got an area over here where we can tailgate a little bit. Now, at this point in my life, I don't drink anymore, but I'm still going to tailgate and mingle with people and have fun. So we're all walking over to the tailgate area, and they pull him to the side. And he looks at me with a weird look, and he goes, "Bob, you're just going to have to wait out here." I'm like, "Why?" And he goes, "So-and-so sees you got a Philadelphia Eagles shirt on, and he doesn't want you in the tailgate area." The so-and-so was that guy who interviewed me 3 years ago. And I'm like, "Are you 6 years old? Is he 6? Are we effing kidding here?" So like an idiot, I waited outside the tailgate. Here I am outside. Luckily it wasn't cold. My friend's side. Luckily it wasn't cold. My friends are in there drinking, schmoozing, and I'm just standing outside there like a dork, waving at people, because half the crowd there was from Philadelphia and wearing Eagles stuff. So I thought it was just a petty move. You're honestly not going to let me in a booth because I got another shirt on, and I'm thinking, how good could your sports show be if you can't even talk to somebody who roots for another team? And I know he's still somewhat involved, I think, somewhere in Baltimore sports. I think he's still one of those AM stations. Those AM stations, unfortunately, they're like, it's history. They're gone. I guess he streams as well. I mean, I haven't talked to this guy in years, but I didn't even talk to him that day. But I just found it weird. I'm standing outside like an idiot. So eventually, after a couple of minutes, they all come out and get me, and they're like, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah." I looked over at him. I think he looked at me. And I'm like, "Oh, Christ, it's him?" Dude, like, "Yeah, you know I'm right." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Is that sore over me wearing another shirt?" What the petty things we do in sports and business, huh? Here's a woman who's not petty, Abby Friedman. She's coming up next on the Work With Me podcast. WorkWithMePodcast.com, 1023 HD2 KKNH, where classic rock lives, TakeRadio.com, and now a word from our sponsor. Hi, it's Bob Stei. Look, anxiety and stress overload is very real, as life as we know it has just been turned upside down. Worldwide pandemic has triggered a stress response that has us feeling like we are falling apart. This roller coaster doesn't seem to stop. If you're experiencing panic attacks and stress burnout, causing a rapid decline in your health and ability to cope, and you've tried reading the books, getting therapy, and adjusting your diet, and yet nothing seems to stop the crushing panic and resulting fatigue, Divine Design with Alicia French can help. Through her own health and stress transformation and 6 years of experience as a functional nutrition practitioner, focused on neuro-emotional balancing, Alisa has helped hundreds of clients get their health and lives back. Call or text her today for a 60-minute consultation. 509-638-4329, 509-638-4329, and tell her Bob Stei sent you.
This is the Work With Me podcast at workwithmepodcast.com.
So, Bob, I'm excited to have our guest on the show today, Abby Friedman. Abby, welcome to the Work With Me podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hello, Abby.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Abby, we're going to let you kind of do your introduction. So, as I understand it, you spent a good amount of time in the corporate world and in the sports world in various roles with large companies such as MSNBC, MLB, and the NFL, and many more, and also ended up at Boston University. So tell us how you arrived at those points.
So my journey to where I am now is actually very different and unique, I like to say. When I was 15 years old, I fell in love with the world of television production. So I loved the intricacies of it all. I loved how it all worked. I was mesmerized by how you put a live television on air. So that led me to Boston University, where I went to college, and I majored in television production. While I was there, I actually got a really unique and exciting experience to work for the Red Sox. And it was the year that they finally won the World Series,
Wow.
which of course brought my love of sports that I grew up with. That's been ingrained in my brain since before I was born, probably. It did give my father a slight nerve heart attack when he found out I was working for the Red Sox. He's a Cleveland Indians fan, but that's not
Okay.
for that. But it brought my love of sports and my love of television into one place, and it really nurtured where I was going to go. So from there, I was in the sports world working in television production, and on a random way through a mutual connection through ESPN, where I was working for a while, I landed in the news business. Completely polar opposite from the sports world.
Right.
But while I was in the news business, I was given the great gift of learning from some amazing mentors. And I was a production manager around the country. I was producing live television events from the Mississippi River, from the Grand Canyon, from the Needle out in Seattle. I was seeing the country. I visited 46 states. Like, it's more states than I ever thought I would ever go. So I was traveling around the country for a number of years, working for MSNBC and NBC Politics. And from there, my love of event planning really grew and really fostered. And that's how I started my own company, Friedman Productions, was because I left the corporate world. And I went and said, I want to try this on my own. I want to see if I can make this work. I have enough confidence. It was the right time for my family, for me to go off on my own and start my own company and really be focused to the New York City metropolitan area. I have a lot of connections, and a lot of my event planning has taken me to different parts of the country, but I'm not traveling constantly. I have 2 young children, and it just made sense for my family at the time for me to take that route. So that's where I kind of went to. And I've loved every minute of it. I took my production management experience and I combined it with my event planning experience, and I really formed the company, Friedman Productions. And then once the pandemic hit, it really brought a new level to my resume, I like to say, where now I do virtual events. I become your one-stop shop for virtual events. I learned from the best what makes a good TV show, so I can tell you what TV show, So I can tell you what makes a good virtual event and what's going to make people stick around. If, I give you my advice, I help you find the right platform. For any fundraisers and stuff, I help with the swag items. I help find the speakers. I really bring all of my talents into one to produce your virtual event.
That's incredible. So in addition to seeing 46 states, what are some of the other favorite memories that you have of the time when you were in these various roles, when you were more in the corporate, sports, news business?
So, I will tell you that I loved every single aspect of it all. Like, it was great. I learned from some of the best people in the business. I learned, we were on one of my favorite stories, which I kind of alluded to, was we were on the Mississippi River doing a live television show in the middle of St. Louis. Like, who does that? We did. Why not? Or another one of my favorite memories that I joke around a lot about is we were going to a number of different college campuses, and we were doing back to back to back. The first college campus, success. The second college campus, we were at Ohio State University, which again gave me a panic attack because I'm a Michigan girl. Have to give a shout out to my team. And we were at the Ohio State campus, and all flights were canceled to Chicago. There was a huge snowstorm, everything was canceled, couldn't get out. I have a live show the next day. I have to get not only myself, which yes, I need to be there, but if I'm not there, the show can still go on. I had to get the anchor there. Like, the anchor had to get to Chicago. So we rented a car and we drove from Ohio to Chicago. It was one of the longest road trips of my life, but it was on a TV show, which is really what's been ingrained to me. And it comes back to what I do now. It's my commitment to putting on your event. It's like no snowstorm's going to stop me. No, whatever it is, it's not going to stop me from getting to make sure that what we need to accomplish is accomplished.
Neither rain nor sleet nor
That's
snow.
the word. Yes.
From the post office, right?
Could you tell that I was trying to remember that line and I totally blanked under pressure?
That's right. We're all here to help each other out. That's what it's all about, right?
I appreciate it.
I love your story of St. Louis, the gateway to the West. What a great city, and a lot of people don't realize the heritage and the great history that surrounds that city.
It's amazing. Someplace else that I visited, which is a small town, Seneca Falls. I don't know if you know it, but it's just walking around. It's a Wonderful Life. That's where they say it was based and everything. Right. And you walk around, and afterwards, like, I've seen that movie thousands and thousands of times. But after I was in this small little town, I went home and I had to watch that movie again. And I was like, oh my God, it is Seneca Falls. Like, I understand now. Because it's like, you just like see little things in that movie and you're like, oh, okay. Like, I know that bank. I know there.
Right. And so with your own company, I know Bob's going to ask you more specific questions about what the company does and so forth. But tell me just a little bit more about what it takes to run your own company. Like, what's a day in the life of Abby Friedman like?
It really depends on your hour. It's crazy. It's complicated. There's a lot of juggling happening. I only take on the number of clients that I can work with at a certain time. I am just my own for my company. I do outsource if I need help with something, especially during live events when I needed people like on the ground. I of course had people that I would go to, but for the most part, it's just me. And I like to develop relationships with my clients. So I believe that it's important for me to really go and have conversations with you, not just send emails. I'm very much into the face-to-face. So now I'm very much into the Zoom conversations, because that's how we're all communicating these days. And I don't really believe in the phone calls and stuff like that. Like, I really want us to develop a connection. Once I have a connection with you, we can talk on the phone, you can text me, all that kind of stuff. But I really want you to feel comfortable with me and me to understand what you want. So I would say a day in the life of Abby Friedman is I wake up, I check my email, I answer anything that's important. I get my son ready to go to pre-K. Thank goodness, he is in 5 days a week right now. But he has to be there at 8 a.m. on the dot. So we walk out of this house at 7:45 in the morning. I drop him off at 8 a.m. on the dot. And then I head home. And on my way home, I usually have a phone call with a client or something along those lines just to start my day. And then I just go with the emails and I manage the events that I'm working on. I have a number of events in the next 6 weeks that are all happening at once, which is amazing. And I'm really excited because, you know, a lot of nonprofits need to start raising money because they haven't raised money for a while. I'm working with a various number of corporate clients also who are trying to get the word out and raise awareness about their company and stuff. And then working with some clients on just some community development within their company, because people have been not seeing each other for so long that now we need to figure out ways to make this fun, and people are zoomed out. That's the phrase I like to say is, if you just say join me on Zoom for a cocktail hour, somebody's like, I'd rather just sit in the corner by myself and not talk to anybody. But if you say, I have a magician coming on and you're going to get a piece of swag in the mail to participate in this, you're going to get company corporate involvement with your Zoom call, and then it builds company morale, which a lot of places are missing right now because nobody's in person.
Right. So you read my mind, because I was just going to ask you about that. Are people really zoomed out? And you're saying, yes, that's your experience. And kind of the workaround for that is that you create unique experiences that are other than just this Zoom experience.
Exactly. It's really just creating unique experiences. And what I do for a lot of like nonprofits that I work with and stuff is we don't use Zoom necessarily. We use other platforms, because when people get a link to a different platform, they're more intrigued to click on that link, even though it's almost very similar to Zoom, but it's not called Zoom. And no offense to Zoom. Zoom is a great place. Like, I don't want to, but it's just people need to feel like that they're getting more for their money, or they're getting more for their time. And that's how you can get around that, is what I found.
Right.
All right, we are with Abby Friedman from Friedman Productions. You're listening to the Work With Me podcast at workwithmepodcast.com, 1023 HC2 KKNH, where classic rock lives, and tickradio.com. Abby, we talked a little bit about your love of sports. I got a 0 degree separation thing with you. My stepfather is from New England, a diehard Red Sox fan, and my wife's family is from Cleveland, diehard Indians fan. So I get where you're coming from there.
Oh my goodness.
Who are your
Mix in the Mets in there. We're Mets season ticket holders. We can't go this year, but they go to next year, so it's just fine. It's like they just extend. And we are lifelong Jets fans right in this family.
As a diehard Phillies fan, I think this interview is over now.
I think we can no longer talk anymore. It's been great talking to you guys. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the time.
So Abby, how did you launch your company? How did the launch go through?
It's really anticlimactic. I kind of just started one day and started networking and pushing myself out there and just saying, hi, work with me, and using my connections. I have a Rolodex that's very, very deep. And due to that, I was able to really get my word out there. I asked for favors, not gonna lie. I think that's how everyone kind of launches in the nutshell, is they just ask somebody for a favor. And I just kind of put my word out there, asked for favors, did favors for other people, and then they reciprocated, and it just kind of bulldozed from there in a great and wonderful way.
Now, you had mentioned before had to make this year because of Corona. Tell us a little bit about where you were then and how you've adjusted to this crazy time we're going through now.
So before COVID, I was doing all in-person events. So you name it, I was doing it. I was doing workshops, I was doing galas, I was doing fundraisers, I was doing dinners, I was doing conferences. I was doing all of these kinds of things. And then once COVID hit, you're not going to have 1,000 people in a room anytime in the near future. As depressing as this is for me to say, it's not going to happen. I'm going to be lucky if come the spring, we can get 100 people in the room. Like that's my dream right now, which I never thought I would ever say. But that's just where we're at in this world. And so then I just started pivoting to the virtual world. and becoming really versed in everything that's out there for the virtual world and what kind of platforms are there. I started taking tutorials on different platforms. I started developing relationships. Again, I went back to my networking. I am part of some amazing networking groups. I'm part of BNI Chapter 1. I'm part of the 100 Club, just to name a few. And I really use those networks to really branch out on who I am and say to my networks, you guys have seen what I can do for in-person events. Introduce me to the people who need me for virtual events. Please help me. Right now, my business is dead and I need you to make this work.
Now let's pretend Corona comes to an end. You're back to normal. What do you fantasize as the dream event for you to throw? What's your dream of the event you would love to plan?
So it's going to sound weird. I don't really have a dream event. I have lots of different events. I've had lots of different experiences in my life that have really gotten me to this point. I love events that combine the television experience with the in-person experience. So if it's an event where we're doing sponsorships and speakers and everything like that, and we're cutting clips for TV, I love that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I also have really developed a new love and appreciation for all of these nonprofits that I've started working with and developing relationships with. And I would love to continue working with them and really building out their database, their awareness, and helping them raise money. As I said earlier, I'm the type of person that yes, everyone's in it to make a buck and all of that kind of stuff, don't get me wrong, but I'm the type of person that's in it to really develop relationships with people and help people. Like, I become invested in these organizations. I end up donating money to these organizations because I see the work that they're doing, and I just fall in love with them. So I know that doesn't exactly answer the question, but that's my answer.
Well, it's just interesting. You look over your background and you actually got to work with the Jets, correct?
Yes,
so that was pretty much your dream right there.
Yes, it was my dream. It was amazing. I loved working with the Jets. I worked for their social media department. I worked for them for an entire season, and it was great. It was a great experience, and I really enjoyed my time.
Now, as me being an MSNBC junkie, who did you get to work with there? Because that would be part of my dream.
So I worked with a lot of amazing people over at MSNBC. So a couple of the shows that I really pride myself on working on, one is The Cycle. It was with Crystal Ball. It was with Abby Huntsman, Ari Melber, or Steve Kornacki at first, depending on when you watched it, if you were started at the front, and Teray. And that was really amazing because I was part of not only the launch of that show, but I was part of the show for the entire time it was on air. So I really got to see that show develop and go from an idea to being on air and what it became when we went off air. And it was just very inspiring to watch it all develop. And I got to learn from some of the best people in the business for that show.
What I love about Steve Kornacki is, and this is just me being a geek, because I have MSNBC, every time they go to him and he gets in front of the map, I get so excited because I know something exciting is going to happen. Does he always have those charts to pull out?
Yes, always. His mind is the most fascinating thing I have ever seen in my entire life. We developed a web series that was like a spinoff of The Cycle, and he basically developed, he just had all of this knowledge. He's a wealth of information, and it was just fascinating to watch him just dive into every single thing. You have a question, he can answer it, or he will know how to find the answer.
That's great.
I want to talk a little bit more about brilliant minds. And I think it's interesting whether you're talking about television, film, production. So who's another example of someone that you've been able to work with in your experience that when you look at, you say, that is a mind that is out of this world? Any additional thoughts come to you?
I mean, a lot. I've had some great experience of working with some amazing people in my life. I mean, there's a couple people. One person is my former boss. I don't necessarily want to name names if that's okay, but my former boss, he really taught me everything that I need to know. And he really took me by the hand and said to me, this is how you put a TV show on. This is what you do. And then my mentor in the television world, as well as in the event planning world. Anytime I have a question or anything that I'm unsure of or anything along those lines, he's also there to guide me, but not tell me the answers, but instead help me find the answers, which is something that I hope that I help with people too. If they come to me to ask a question, it's more, I don't always, like, I'm always happy to have a conversation with people. I love meeting new people. I love talking to people, but it's more, I've been taught in my career to never tell somebody the answer, but guide them to find the answer, because that's how they're going to learn and how they're going to develop and nurture as a person.
Now, Abby, we end every podcast by putting you on the stranded island and letting you have one thing that's your choice. So before we go, let's put Abby Friedman on the stranded island. And Abby Friedman from Friedman Productions is with us on the Work With Me podcast, workwithmepodcast.com, 1023 HC2, KKNH, where classic rock lives, and Tick Radio. I got to say that for all of our affiliates, or nobody's happy. All right. You're on the stranded island. You can have one food or one type of cuisine. What's it going to be?
So I am a pizza girl. I would take a good slice of New York pizza. There are some better pizza places than others in New York, but regardless, it would have to be New York pizza. No offense to all these pizza places that try to make yourself look like you're New York pizza, but I want it. And I am an original kind of girl where I just want that cheese slice of pizza.
I am biased. The best pizza in New York, 242nd and Broadway, right down the street from my dorm room. Try it one time.
Interesting. I'm going to have to go try this pizza.
Called Broadway Joe. It's worth the trip up to the Bronx. One book. You have one book you can read over and over.
So this is embarrassing, but I'm not really I don't have time anymore to really read any books. I mean, if you give me a TV show, I mean, it's a little embarrassing, but I love some Real Housewives of any, insert the name there. I call it my mindless television. I know people use books for that. That's why I'm pushing it over to TV a little bit, where I can sit there and just watch marathons of it over and over again and do other things at the same time. But it really gives me just a sense of like exhale kind of thing.
What about one movie you have to watch over and over?
Pretty Woman. It is my favorite movie.
It's all in the theater. Good movie. And finally, one artist or musician to listen to over and over.
I am I love like Alicia Keys. I love like she's amazing, and I really enjoy listening to her music, and it really moves me and everything like that. But I also, at the same time, I'm a huge Dave Matthews girl, where he was the first concert that I went to. I know most of his songs by heart. And I really just love anything 80s rock at the same time. Like we've been known in our house to just say, Alexa, play 80s music, and just go with whatever's on the Alexa kind of situation, and just have it there for having, when people could all be together, when we had friends over and stuff like that. Like that was really where we were at.
Do you realize once you said that, everybody who's listening to their Alexas just went off with 80s music?
Yeah, you're all welcome.
Abby, where can people get in touch with you about event planning?
So please check out my website, friedmanproductions.com, or you can email me at abby@friedmanproductions.com. I love hearing from people. I love talking to people, and I'm really excited to help you plan your next event.
Abby, thank you so much for taking time out today to hang with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Work With Me podcast with Bob Stei and Lorindy Ruse. Original score by Mark Ruse. The show has been edited and produced by RuseAdvisors.com. Copyright 2020 Ruse Advisors.